police in Las Vegas found themselves in the middle of a UFO mystery last month after
To us, big eyes. They have big eyes.
911, what are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal? Or?
One of my partners said they saw something fall out of the sky too, so that's why I'm kind of curious.
What sign? I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Okay, hang on.
He's right.
Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, he's good. He's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
Mythical Legends Podcast with your host Daniel Barnett.
Welcome to the Mythical Legends Podcast. My name is Daniel Barnett and this is our first live podcast, so please enjoy it. Our guest today is one of the most amazing researchers in my opinion, and I am very proud to have him here today, so please enjoy it and please ask questions. So today our guest is a Bigfoot researcher and an author and producer of the Sierra Sounds, Ron Morehead. We are very pleased to have him here today, so let's bring him on and please feel free to ask him questions. Hi Ron, how are you?
Good, Daniel. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thank you for spending time with us today, Ron. Where are you based?
North Carolina, United States.
Nice. Hot and sunny, I assume.
It's about 80 degrees today. It's fall weather.
Oh,
nice weather here, though.
Nice. So could you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I started this over 50 years ago in 1971. I was invited into camp where these guys had been experiencing something. And one of the guys experienced it, and he just ran off the next day because it was way against what he thought, his paradigm. But they were talking about these monsters that were up there. And this camp, which is 8 miles into the wilderness, and it's about 8,400 feet elevation. It's here in the Nevada mountains of California. So the wives were worried because the other hunters had not came out when they were supposed to, and they'd already heard the story from the Johnson brothers who went up there earlier that year. And anyway, they said Donald need to go back because they don't know what happened to the guys. They're not out when they're supposed to be. So the only way he'd go back is if I went back with him. So I did. A little frightening to start with, and it went way against his paradigm of religion. Very religious person, and very. Anyway, he just couldn't believe what he was hearing, and, what he saw, the tracks saw. So that got me into the camp. I was friends with them all, but I wasn't a hunter at that time. But I became a hunter after that, just so I could be part of the group and experience what they were experiencing up there. There was 6 of us all together. Well, 5 after this guy wouldn't go back anymore, counting me. And anyway, we started encountering these creatures, and they'd leaving big tracks, making big sounds at night. And we started taking in recorders and recording their vocalizations and their sounds. And this became known as the Sierra Sounds. We took 1972, we took a investigative reporter up there who had a master's degree in science, but he was working for a newspaper at the time. And he was trying to uncover the possible hoax because this doesn't happen to people very much. And in fact, it didn't happen at all, I found out. So he was, we didn't know he was looking for the hoax, but he had gotten a letter from a cryptolinguist, Ivan Sanderson, who forwarded it to a man named Peter Byrne at a research center out on the West Coast. Peter sent it down to him. His name is Al Berry. And he went up there with us in 72. We invited him. And he started experiencing the same thing. He ended up writing a book about it. And that's how it kind of started for me. It got me on this track of trying to figure these things out, because giants like this aren't supposed to exist, but they do.
And Ron, when you were stood listening to these sounds, how did you feel at this point?
Well, you're a little concerned because they're very aggressive sounding. If you've heard them, you know what I'm talking about there. It's but we all had high-powered guns with us. I mean, it was a hunting camp. So I took one with me because they didn't know, and they said, well, you might need it to protect one of us. not yourself. So anyway, we all had high-powered guns, and had they broken in the shelter at us, we would have shot at them. And they didn't do that though. They were just very aggressive sounding outside our shelter, and that's how it kept going. After a while, we realized they weren't going to bust in the shelter after us, and we started trying to interact with them and try to understand them on what it could be. So they became known as Bigfoot because they had a huge foot. The prints they left outside were just enormous, and some of them were different sizes because there was a family of them up there. So that's
M-
how it got started with me. Yeah.
May I ask, how big were these prints?
Well, one was a small 9-inch track in the snow along with an 18-inch track, which we think was an adolescent
Wow.
its mother. And we found one up there which is 25.5 inches. That was
Wow.
huge. That would have been, but that one wasn't around our camp. We found that up on the ridge above our
Mm.
camp. He must have been a monster, a real big one. Yeah.
And so what started your inspiration for this? What got you interested? Was it the Sierra Sounds or was it something different?
Well, it's the unknown. I think it's our human conditioning to want to explore the unknown. So we kept exploring it and looking, trying to figure it out, and trying to get to the bottom of what it was because there's some mystical stuff happening to us up there too, which we didn't want to talk about because that throws you out with the baby water there. They just people can't get a hold of it. Just being a Bigfoot, much of the Bigfoot existing, much less strange things going on with them. But I've come in my 50 years now of research to believe that they're a whole lot more than what most people give them credit for. At least the ones we encountered were. We tried to trick them over and over, couldn't trick them. They seemed to stay one step above the music all the time. So it was quite an adventure. It went on for several years and still going on, really. But last time I was up there when I had a real good encounter was 10 years ago. So had
Wow.
something happen in 2018 when I allowed a filming crew to go up there because they wanted to document the camp and interview me at the camp. And I was in David Paulides. He did a video on it. Missing 411, the hunted missing 411. And I got about 15 minutes in that section, and he depicted a light going by us. It's just one of the strange things that happened up there. This elongated light just come floating by our tent, and the shelter had been taken down then, so we stayed in tents.
Mm.
And
So if we move on to then my next question is, have you had many more Bigfoot sightings after the Sierra Sounds?
you mean at the Sierra camp or away from the Sierra camp?
Away or
No,
any
not
Bigfoot
away.
sightings?
I've had some interaction away, but no sightings. I had the one sighting there at the Sierra camp, and so did my friend Bill, and so did my daughter. She saw it 3 different times up there. So uh, we know they're around there. They were, right after we did the filming in 2018, there's a huge fire moved through there. So no one's been up there since then. Well, I shouldn't
Mm.
say that. A forestry ranger has, and he sent me some pictures. And
Wow.
there's still some timber left up there, but it's been kind of stripped of any greenery. A lot of it has anyway. But the area is still there. So
Mm.
if they are going into caves or something like that, which we never could find, then they could have not got
Mm.
burned. But they would have migrated out with the other animals anyway.
Mm. Could you tell us about your experiences then?
Sure, you got a couple hours. uh, oh, I've been up there as many times as I could go, hoping for an interaction or something. It wasn't until 1974 when I started interacting with them, when they started making them sounds while we were outside the shelter. And that's when I started doing I thought I was mimicking their sounds, and they were coming back at me with some type of, the cryptolinguist that studied the sounds from the Navy. He said he thought they were slowing their language down, their rapid chatter to something I could maybe understand. Because I wasn't into quantum physics then, I am now, understanding how really all things work. And I had reading this stuff at the bottom. Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Gordon, for that. Well, I've had a lot of things happen. I mean, from the car door slamming outside the shelter, and it's 8 miles in the wilderness. There's no
Wow.
cars up there.
No.
It's lights going around different places, doing different things up there. And one time, I thought I heard a herd of horses coming down from the ridge, and there was no horses up there like that. Nobody
Yeah.
goes up there. It's pretty remote. Excuse me, very imposing area. And the one time I thought I heard sound like it was daytime, a big humming above us, which we couldn't find the source of, like a huge tuning fork. That's what it sounded like. And then when I was up there in 2011, when I had my last interaction with them, I heard some metallic sounds. And we heard
Wow.
one time when we was in the shelter, we heard some clicking sounds coming up closer to the shelter. And we're thinking it was inside the shelter. We had the log door closed, and it was inside the shelter then.
Mm.
So had to come through the walls of the shelter, but we never could see it. You turn the flashlight on and it just not there. You turn back off and hear the clicking sound again. So we've all had a lot of experiences up there, and I try to write about those in my book, Voices in the Wilderness.
Mm. And with these sounds, do you think they use this to communicate? Do you think they have their own language? And I've heard some of your interviews that you've done that you said yes, they do have their own language. What's your opinion on that?
Well, it's not very much of an opinion, it's a fact. They do have language. So once we dealt with it, have a language. It's above, below, and inside our human vocal range. We had a
Mm.
professor of electrical engineering check the sounds out and the tapes that the investigative reporter took to him. And he did a year-long study on it, and he said that they represented an animal 8 foot tall, the little piece that he checked for that, compared to the human vocal mechanism. And the no manipulation in the tapes at all, no, not played backwards, not speeded up, not slowed down, nothing wrong. They were made at the time recording. There was no 60 cycle hum in it, which would have indicated the pre-recording, and there was nothing like that going on. But he's a PhD in electrical engineering, and he attested to that and wrote a paper on it, which was later brought out in a Symposium Anthropology of the Unknown in British Columbia in 1978, I think it was, when that happened. Then later on, we had a cryptolinguist who trained by the military as a
Wow.
cryptolinguist. I get a hold of him by accident, actually, and he looked me up. He was teaching in Missouri at the time, but he was retired military, the Navy, as a cryptolinguist. He did that as a career, um, and he was trained to detect language, if it was a language, if there's any codes in it or something like that, and report it. And if there's any manipulation in it, he was trained to check for that. I didn't know a guy like that existed until he looked me up and wanted to come out and talk to me, and Albury too. And so he did, and he asked if he could study them, and we gave them to him. He said, "There's language there, and by the human definition of language, which means morpheme streams of words,
Mm.
10 or 12 words that make up a little sentence, like we're talking now. Where other animals, according to Dr. Philip Lieberman at the Brown University, who just passed away last year, he said only humans have the vocal mechanism for language. So that puts it into a ballpark of there's a human component to them, but they do have language."
Yeah, and it's really interesting that to think that there are creatures out there that may have de- developed their own language, or as I should say, beings have their own language um that that we don't know about. It's oh, let's not drop that. It seems that there's a lot in this world that we don't know yet, and it's is that that's what got me interested. Where you have no idea on the paranormal side, and it's just a big door to open, and that's what I love about it. But when I came across your research, I was blown away by it. And to then hear those sounds that that are just unknown, that I don't know what to think of them.
Keeps us looking, don't it? Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's the paranormal you talked about, but there's also the woo, all these people that think it's outside the parameters that they've been conditioned for in school, so they don't consider it so much. But we only see within certain parameters. Everything is energy, frequency, and vibration, and that's quantum physics. You have to get outside that box of Newtonian physics. You have to live in it, but you have to think outside of it to understand what we might be dealing with here. These things, I think, have been introduced into this environment by aliens and genome manipulation into a primate of some type, and they've been given the attributes that we humans also have. And my thoughts are that they've been here for eons before Homo sapiens were ever here.
Mm.
So, Bigfoots are not animals. No, they're not animals. They are
Mm.
highly intelligent. Yes, they are, being with powers and abilities way above ours. Yeah. Well, it's not above our understanding. We can understand how powers and abilities can happen if you get into quantum physics. But he's right. They're more like a people. I've said that for years because when you start dealing with them, these people that think they're just a dumb ape out there in the woods that hasn't been discovered have to experience them themselves, I guess, to ever understand or to ever tackle quantum physics and to see what's really going on in this universe, because everything from the atom to the cosmos is under the laws of quantum physics, and that's according to Dr. Christopher Brer at West Texas A&M. And you get into Max Planck, who actually was the father of quantum physics, and he got the Nobel Prize in 1918, just over 100 years ago, for discovering quantum physics. And it rides on the back of our three-dimensional environment of Newtonian physics, because that's what it is. We live in a three-dimensional environment, but there's all these other dimensions, all these other frequencies out there that we don't see with our eyes. Our eyes are conditioned. They're only allowed to see in the frequency of light, which is 430 to 770 terahertz.
Mm.
So if you realize how many more frequencies there are out there, and they're innumerable, there's more things going on. There's more things going on than we can see. We just don't see anything outside that light's frequency. It gets into quantum physics, and I would encourage anybody to do their own homework and look into this, because it goes way back. I was raised religiously. I'm not religious now, but I'm a spiritual
Okay.
person, as you are, like we all are. And I think, Cortesa said, what one man calls God, another one calls quantum physics. So they're synonymous, once you get out of that, because, I know professors that are in this. I've spoken with them, I've traveled with them around the world
Mm.
sometimes. And these guys won't get out of their parameters because they've been trained in that, and they can't. It's
Yeah.
to save face with their colleagues or lose their funding or tenure or something. Excuse me. And so I understand them. They spend a lot of time earning that degree and earning that ability to study in that field. But still, I think they got to break from that. Somebody does somewhere. And I'm not a physicist, so I don't have to be restrained by those conditions. But
And
I guess I could be called a citizens physicist.
that kind of almost answers my next question. Is could you tell us a bit more about quantum physics and your view on it?
Yeah, what do you want to know? There's so
On
much
on
there, you can't get around. You can't get your head around it all. But if you just understand that there's somebody tell me how far it is to the end of the universe. There's no end to the end of the universe. How could you describe it, right? So you have to
Yeah.
understand there's more going on that you can't see. There's things that happen around us right now that you just don't see, not in our
Yeah.
frequency. And who was it? Dr. Paul Dirac. I had to get into how they disappear, because some people say they saw them disappear. You hear that from different people over the years, different times. You got to wonder. Some are very, very credible. I mean, most of them are. And what do you do with that? Nothing can just disappear out of our sight. Yes, they can. They can go out of our parameters, our frequency parameters. And Dr. Paul Dirac discovered what they call antimatter in 1933 and got the Nobel Prize for it. Antimatter is the direct exchange between matter and energy. And that means matter and energy are interchangeable. And that also means should I be reading these questions? Well, how they disappear? They go out of our frequency, out of our light, and
Yeah.
that's uh, that's how it is, and that's how a lot of things are. Some people can see
It's
better than others see energy. You have to be able to see energy to see anything else outside that.
yeah, it's such a big universe when you open up to the paranormal side of Bigfoot. And currently, right now, because I am only 14, I've focused on the kind of flesh and blood side of it to try and get my mind on the most logic.
Mm.
And I'm also autistic as well, so I like to keep my mind on logic. Whether when I do go out with my small team and I go, it just doesn't fit in with logic. It doesn't. So I turn to paranormal and go, oh, it's too much now. It's all way and it, but it's such a big universe. It's a lot to go through, if you know what I mean.
Now, well, your method is typical. Most people go out with thinking they have to be in this what we can see, hear, feel. That's Newtonian physics. Newtonian physics is everything you can. It's based on the fact that everything is touchable. Feel, you can feel it, you can hear it, you can. It's got matter. It's measurable, predictable. Quantum physics isn't that way. It's just not measurable. It's unpredictable. So you got to understand that really does exist. It's a real science. It's called modern science,
Mm.
and it can be flesh and blood, but nothing's just flesh and blood. We have
No,
cognizance.
yeah.
We have more going on inside of us as humans than most people realize. We have a lot to do, a lot more to evolve into and understand. And these things are part human, and they've been created by something unusual, probably a high frequential being.
Mm.
And I believe they're related to the Anunnaki from the cuneiform texts, which is the first written language in existence that we know of. And most all written languages have came from that text, and it's just finally translated and deciphered here not too long ago. But there's a lot of those. Am I supposed to answer these questions that come up here?
I think they're just
Oh,
chatting in the chat. I think. There was one that said that she was fascinated into Bigfoot. Um, so yeah. So my next question for you is: what are your thoughts on the Patterson Gimlin film?
oh, Patterson Gimlin film.
Mm.
Well, I know Bob quite well, and I believe he's a gentleman. He's real. He's never changed his story after 50 years, and been with him a lot. Uh, we'll never know everything about that film because there's been so many people criticizing it. But in 1967, when that film was made, they couldn't do the things that we can do nowadays. There's some
Mm.
really good, I don't know what you call it, ways to make that film better now. They're
Yeah.
doing that, and they're discovering more and more. And it's a good film. I mean, as far as I know, it's never been debunked. People say
Mm.
they don't believe it. Well, they cannot believe it. That don't mean it's not real.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's real, but I think it's probably a diluted down Bigfoot. I say diluted down. These things have been here for eons. They've crossbred with a lot of indigenous people. Some of them become more human-like than others. Some of them can do things that other ones can't do, and that's the way I see it. And I'm probably one of the older researchers in existence still today.
Mm. And I don't know if you know Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum, but I think he said about the Patterson Gimlin film and how it is real, and he's more on the scientist side, and it's like you have two sides to what people think Bigfoot is,
Mm.
and it's really really interesting to know both sides, and to kind of involve myself in both sides to get your side, to get scientist side, and it's a really, really amazing topic to kind of d- discuss, I think.
Well, you don't have to be two different sides. I try to get
Mm.
that's what I try to do in my book, is try to bring the science and spirituality back together because I know Jeff Beck quite well. I've been into Russia with him, Siberia, and we've talked at a lot of conferences together. And I know where he's at. You know, he's in the parameters of science of Newtonian physics, and he's been taught and trained within this parameters of that science, and he can't get out of that. He can get out of it when he's not talking in public. You know, he can because he's a religious man.
Mm.
Where's God?
Yeah, yeah,
You know, well, you got to ask that question and see if people think these things can just be nothing more than an ape in the woods. However, uh,
mm,
I know other physicists too and scientists who claim they have to be flesh and blood, but that's because they're looking at it from the Gigantopithecus, which they think may not have went extinct, and they think it's a remnant from that. It crossed the land bridge 12,000 years ago or so, and that's the way it goes with them. But these things have been here a lot longer. And they don't know for sure if the Gigantopithecus stood upright or not. They have some
yeah,
jawbones and some teeth, so they don't know that for sure. But it was if it had stood upright, it'd been 10 to 12 foot tall. And so that's where they go with their science because that's hard evidence, you know. But they'll never get
mm,
hard evidence on something that's in the paranormal field. You know,
yeah,
they don't even look
and
for it and want to entertain it.
to add to that is my big question is why haven't we found any bones of this creature?
Oh, that's a simple one. You sure you want to ask that? Well, Earth cleans itself up. Animals clean up that stuff. I've seen that happen more times than a lot of people. I went into the woods one time. They were going heading to camp, and I seen this freshly killed deer that had just been eaten on. I've seen these fresh bear tracks skidding away from it. I've seen this
Mm,
big brush pile over next to it. And I thought, this is where I should skid out and get away from here because I messed up his lunch, you know. Well, I went back a few weeks later, and there was some bones there still. Back a year later, and there were still remnants scattered here and there. All there.
mm,
Then you would never know it was there now. Anything that ever happened there. It cleans up itself, and if you're looking for
mm,
the bones of something, you know, that could be true. I had a bear walk on my ranch one time, an
mm,
injured bear, and he died on my ranch. And I called whoever it was supposed to pick up stuff like that, and they wouldn't come out. And so I just leave it alone. Well, I was going to leave it alone anyway because it's right in the middle of a bunch of poison oak. So
mm,
I let it waylay there. And the following year, you could see remnants of it, you know, but a year after that, you'd never know if anything had happened. So nature cleans itself up, you know, from birds, the ants, and everything else, the worms, all that stuff just cleans itself up.
mm,
So you're probably not going to find bones. Plus, there's a native lore that says they take care of their own. So if there are people like I tend to think they are, if there's another one around, they will help them. You get into even the Fred Beck story from 1924 when he claims up swears he shot one that fell off a 400-foot cliff, went
mm,
down and couldn't find the body. Well, what happened? Did he kill it, or
yeah,
did did the other ones take it away? Because they were dealing with several of them at the time in their camp there at Mount St. Helens. And he went to his deathbed thinking they were paranormal because he said he followed some tracks one time that he said for the tracks not to leave some more tracks in the mud where he's tracking them, it would have had to jump 160 feet. Well, how
mm,
does that happen? You know, how can tractors
yeah,
just stop? Well, how it stops, it's in the quantum physics and my theory on how they disappear. And once they go out of your perception and go into another dimension of fourth dimension, whatever they go, I don't know that. They would have no more density and they wouldn't leave in tracks anymore. And that had
mm,
to happen to me once after this. I seen
wow,
it. My daughter saw one and we found a trackway and I followed it and it just all of a sudden it stopped. And you think, well, they're inept. They could have found where it went. Oh, I looked all over. You know, we could have jumped as far as 30 feet and it didn't. no trees I could have climbed up in. Those trees, where they couldn't have climbed up in them, they were too small. Or did they go in
Mm.
the tree? There's another
Mm.
quantum physics thing.
Yeah,
Because if they can
that's
change
true.
their
Yeah.
matter, if they can change their matter into energy, they can go into a tree and you never see them. Some of
I
the reports then.
I will mention that I've had a weird experience myself with possibly something that could have been in a tree, whether it was a shadow or not. But I don't know how you feel about tree structures, but I found possibly a tree structure that was 15 feet tall, and we were taking photos. And when we came back, I was in the middle of another podcast, and a comment came online saying, "Is that Bigfoot?" And I look on it, and I suddenly see that there is this black shadow in the background that looked like it has ears. So I zoom in, and we go back. So what we thought was ground level was actually 20 feet up a tree. I I don't know how to explain that, whether it was a shadow or not. It looked like something in a tree.
My experience, well, probably something in the tree, just don't know what would do it. But my experience is they have a lot of reports of these things around clear cutting trees down. They really don't like what we're doing to the environment, not at all.
Mm,
They have a real problem with us cutting trees down, and a lot of reports are around when they're cutting trees down. I back what Ron is saying. Yeah, yeah, they could change their frequency in some across dimensions.
mm. It's even here in the UK. I don't know whether Bigfoot is here in the UK, but we've had some weird stuff here too, and it seems to be a worldwide case that can't be solved. It feels like it can't be solved, and I don't know whether we are any closer f- to it being solved. If it's paranormal, I don't know if it's ever going to be solved. But I know that it's a very interesting mystery. I think a lot of people would agree with me.
I think understanding is the key. You may not ever solve it if they're what I'm suggesting here, but it's certainly worth understanding how it happens, and that's what my book's all about, quantum Bigfoot,
Mm,
and get into the science. I'm writing another book right now, and should be out early next year, and it'll go a little bit more into the same realm, but it's all backed by science and by because quantum physics is a science. It's not like it should be shunned over because they can't understand it. But unfortunately, people, if they don't think they can understand it, they shove it aside. But you can understand it. I mean, there's physicists all over the world that understands it. But what you understand is that you can't understand it, all of it.
yeah.
But the facts are there. If it's been proven mathematically, like Dr. Dirac did on antimatter, it has to be disproven mathematically. Show that
Mm,
the math is wrong, and that hasn't happened. It hadn't happened with Einstein. Einstein said, if you can find the frequency of anything, you can change its matter. Well, I think that's how
mm.
miracles are done.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of your uh facts and opinions I completely agree on, and and I really appreciate that you you've really thought through what your opinion is, and I actually can't wait for your next book.
Thank you.
um so what is the biggest challenge you have faced in your research?
What we're talking about right now, getting people who think they're just an ape out in the woods, flesh and blood only, nothing else, getting them to understand that there's more going on that they don't see, there's more going on
Mm,
that they can't smell. Our olfactory senses, a bear's olfactory sense is 20 times better than ours. They can smell through a can, they can smell through a wall, they can sense out things. And I've come up real close to a bear just sitting there very still and then walk right up close to me until they get a whiff of me, then they're shot off. And you can't hear, we don't hear infrasound or ultrasound, but it's all there.
mm,
And like I
mm,
say, our light, there's more frequencies out there. We just don't So if you can get people's head around that right there and let them understand that there's so much going on that you just don't see or hear or know about, just have
Mm.
to understand that it is there and do not be so surprised when something jumps out in front of you. Because once they close it, they drop their density down into our 3D world, we can see them. And they have
Mm.
to change their density, raise it into a different dimension to get out of our light spectrum.
Mm. Yeah, and my mind has always been open to the possibility of it being paranormal, but God forbid, if something jumped right out in front of me, I would be gone.
There's a question here. If they're not found, it poses
Yeah.
a big question. Why? Well, I mentioned the bone part. If they either take care of their own or they just deteriorate in the woods like a regular animal would. Also, I think if they are what I consider them to be, they're not supposed to interfere with our karma. What we're see, this whole life that we're in here is an experiment. We get experiences in it, and we're supposed to respond to those experiences. And if you don't respond properly, your frequency is going to go down. Respond positively. If you respond positively with love and compassion, your frequency is going to rise. We have to rise our frequency to get out of this three-dimensional environment we're in. So when our body dies, our etherical body, our spiritual body, continues to live. Because energy can't die. That's a fact, quantum fact. Uh, just saying. Because they're not going to interfere with us like UFOs don't interfere with what we're supposed to. We're supposed to make decisions, and decisions are based on our experiences. We all have our challenges. If you can respond to everything with love and compassion, don't get pissed off at somebody else because they've done something wrong. You're gonna be a better person, and you're not gonna be sick much anymore. You're gonna be happy. You're gonna raise your frequency, and you're gonna be better off when you do pass out of this body. Just
Mm.
saying.
There was a comment underneath I completely agree with.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a nice
No.
comment. Over the years, and they all want to see it goes. Yeah. Well, some people can see ghosts because of I think the plasma field of density at nights when you see them because that's when the Earth's frequency drops down too. And if you're open and have the ability to see through energy a little bit, because that's all ghosts are as a form of energy, they're not supposed to interact with us either, but sometimes they do. Things
Mm.
have a choice. You always have a choice in this dimension or another one. And if you get into the spirituality of it, fallen angels back in the Old Testament of the Bible, they had a choice to not interfere with humans, but they did. That's called the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki created the written language, the cuneiform text. Uh,
Mm.
so they interfered. They started giving advanced knowledge to human beings. And I got some You hear the voices going on in my background?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Yeah, I got some construction going on here.
Oh. So, do you believe UK
One moment, and I'll stop that stuff.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, there. I did it. Okay, sorry about that.
It's all right. So do you believe Bigfoot is everywhere on every continent, UK, or do you think it's in one concentrated area?
No, it's everywhere. I've been in Nepal. I've been into South America. I've been into Siberia. They all got stories of them. Australia's got stories of them. They can be anywhere because I do believe the aliens have messed around with the genome of different species on this planet for eons. Hybridization program going on, and they could be over there, and
Mm.
I don't care what the history books say. They could be wherever they are planted. I should say.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's and And Ron, I will completely agree. It is getting harder and harder and harder by the second to to not go into the paranormal side, and I'm trying to keep myself out for logic, but I'm slowly edging in.
Keep your logic. You got to have it to exist, to go to the supermarket and all that stuff, you need that logic, but still you got to open your mind. It's like a parachute. It's only going to work if it
Mm,
opens. So you need to open it up and understand how much more is going on. And
mm,
that's the something call you woo-woo or paranormal. Quantum physics answers the questions that the woo-woo or the paranormal have. It's not it's not considered the same. Quantum
mm,
physics is a science, a modern science they call it. It's only a little over 100 years old, and it's there, and it's a fact. And even the classical scientists will admit that it's there, but they're not trained to study that. You have to
mm,
open your mind up and go there. So
mm.
anyway, yeah, they can be anywhere.
um, s-
Energy can be anywhere. There's no
so
time.
what is the
I was going to say that we live in a linear time in this three-dimensional environment. Linear time means there's going to be a tomorrow,
yeah.
and there was a yesterday, but it's not that way when you get into quantum physics. Everything's in the now. There's no such thing as linear time, but it's presented for us just so we can go through experiences as human beings. Responding to those experiences is what's important for us as humanoids on this planet.
Mm,
If you don't respond to it properly, if you just pass away without responding to it properly, chances are you're gonna have to go somewhere else or come back here as another person. It's called multiple embodiments, which a lot of people believe in, and that's either going to be on this planet or somewhere else. I don't know. I've been
mm.
there, but I don't know what I did. Uh, but I've had a
um,
good life, and I appreciate this planet. We just need to take better care of it, not blow it up.
yeah, yeah, I
Mm.
completely agree there. So what is the most intriguing thing that you have learned about Bigfoot over your research?
Well, I'm not sure I've learned very much. I've just learned more than most people because I've opened my mind up to another science which is out there. And I've been here doing this longer than most. I've been doing it
Mm,
over 50 years. I was 29 when it started with me in 1971. I'm in my 80s now, and I keep learning every day. I have a saying that says, when you're green, you grow. When you're ripe, you rot. So we just got to stay green and keep trying to grow and learn more. And that's what I do. I try to learn
mm.
more all the time.
And
And
I agree that you've learned a good amount, Ron.
well, I think I have, but then, what do you really know?
Mm,
Everything projected out of your pineal gland all the way through your body. No, I'm a big component of meditation, and your pineal gland. It's in. You read my book. It's inside your head, and I think it's receptors. The third eye, the eye Horus. Uh, it's just a receiver in your head. If you keep that open, keep it decalcified with proper diet, it feeds into your heart. Your heart is your mind. It's really your heart and your brain have to be in coherence. They have to be in sequence. And that's what you do with meditations. You get those things balanced right. You can receive. So when you get this gut feeling in your side of you, you should go by that because that's telling you the right thing. The problem we all have is our brain, outside brain's been conditioned to believe this way or that way, this religion or that religion or something else. And when you're conditioned like that, it's hard to break out of that with your brain's only going to process what it's going to learn, what it's been taught. But if you can learn to be guided by your heart's gut feeling, you're going to be better off. There's times
mm,
when you might make a lot more money if you go over here on the right, but your heart says go over here to the left for this old lady's hurting. Well, you should do that
mm,
because it's going to help you. It's going to be better for everything, for you, for her, for everything. Right thing to do. Do you
mm,
think infrasound is part of the natural defense? Infrasound could be more part of the natural defense. I think I've been hit by it up there. Yes, other animals do use it. Uh, I'm answering that question that was there. I've walked out a time or two up there and got frozen in my tracks by something. And one of these creatures we know the one that beat us were out there because we heard mouthing off. This is in the 70s. So Warren Johnson and I ran out of the shelter right quick. At that time, we were afraid of them. No, we knew they weren't going to eat us or carry us away or anything like that. So we get kind of bold. We wanted to see one. The bright moonlit night, so we stepped out of the shelter and started walking up towards this tree, thinking it's going to run away. Well, don't run. It didn't run at all. Nothing came out, except all of a sudden we both hit a wall, an invisible wall. We didn't know what. He looked at me and said, I can't go anymore. And I said, I can't either. So we turned around and went backward, and that worked. As soon as we got back in, it started mouthing off again. So I think it was playing with us, but it certainly stopped us. That happened to me a couple times up there. It's just uncanny feeling. If you don't have control to go forward, it's like Star Trek's invisible wall. So it could have been
um,
infrasound. I brought that up to a scientist. He said it was infrasound or pheromones. Because pheromones can
mm,
change you too. But infrasound definitely will affect you. You don't hear it though. And I always put it off as infrasound because then again, that was in the 70s when I didn't understand much of any of this stuff.
mm. Yeah, and I I haven't done much research into infrasound, but I believe that it's it's a possibility of there being something because I believe we've discovered it in tigers and large cats that they do have infrasound. So on then a logic, it would make sense. On a paranormal side, I I don't know.
Nothing paranormal out of that. I know elephants, giraffes, like you say, large
Mm,
tigers.
yeah.
These things have a very expansive vocal mechanism. Bigfoot does. That's been determined by science, and I think they can probably make any sound they want to sound, and you won't
Mm,
even hear some of it. It could be infrasound, which would possibly paralyze you, not permanently, but just hold you still. In my
mm,
opinion.
yeah.
So that's very logical.
So my last question for you, Ron, is what advice would you give to someone that researches Bigfoot?
What we've been talking about, open their minds up and realize there's more out there that you don't see and understand that and try to realize that what you see out there, everything isn't made from a Bigfoot or every stick structure you see in the forest. And a lot of things are just, some can be made by them. That's not unusual, but uh, just understand what they could be and what you are as a human. Understand how important you are as a human to be planted on this earth and have the experiences that you got, even though they may seem so bad sometimes. But you just got to overcome those and be happy about it and learn how to respond to those things properly with love and compassion. And that's what humans are all about. Is learning how to do that. That's what's going to make us go better and better and higher and higher. Yeah, there you go. That's my advice. If they're looking for Bigfoot, uh, they sometimes you don't find them; they find you. If you got the right frequency and you're doing the right thing, they find you. Just be
Mm,
still. Find a good remote spot that nobody frequencies, and be still. Camp out there as long as you can, and wait for something to happen. But keep your mind open. And again, don't just because you don't understand the sound doesn't mean it's a Bigfoot. Be acquainted with animal sounds. And what we noticed in our camp is when these things were around, there was complete quiet. There was no birds chirping, no frogs,
mm,
no nothing going on. Just everything's dead quiet.
mm,
Oh, then I heard them. When was the last time? Well, the last time I was up there was in 2018 when David Plotty's filming. Nothing happened that time, but then he was up there filming too, and I told him nothing was going to happen. Probably wouldn't take stuff like that. It took 3 or 4 mule loads to carry all the equipment in. And the last time I had an experience was 2011 when I was up there by myself. That was when I heard the chatter and
mm,
had some things happen. I write about that in my first book, Voices of Wilderness. It's a chronicle. It comes with a download of sound bites. So when I get to the part of the story that I'm talking about, you can hear the sound that was happening at that time. And all my stuff is downloadable on my website, and or you can get the hard copy of the books.
mm. So Ron, thank you so much, mate. I really really appreciate this, and it's been it's been a learning curve for me as well, Ron. And I've taken a lot from what you said. So thank you so much, mate.
I hope so. Thank you. I hope I've helped somebody. And I appreciate you asking me on.
That's all right. So guys, I hope you enjoyed mine and Ron's chat. I will see you in the next podcast.